Okay, you mentioned Xavi. Janusz, what do you make of his quotes today? He's been very vocal since it was decided that he was going to leave the football club in the summer. Here's a full screen with today's quotes that Xavi has said. I'm leaving because it's 2.5 years now. I feel there's no compensation for being Barca coach, fighting against a lot of things, wearing you down. You don't enjoy it day to day. I've even seen it in managers that have won here. In other clubs, there's compensation. Arasati told me he enjoys Monday to Friday. I don't. That's the big difference. I don't enjoy Monday to Friday. What do you make of these quotes?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's talking about. I'm very surprised about that. I mean, does he want to be a coach or does he not want to be a coach? Obviously, he knew what it takes, even in the good times, right? I mean, Pep Guardiola, that job when he's won absolutely everything with Xavi, Iniesta, and Messi, took a lot out of him, right? I mean, he had to take sabbatical. So I think he knew exactly what he was getting into. To, on one hand, say, well, I had to take it because of my Barca. You don't have to do anything. You took it because you wanted to, and hopefully because you were good enough to do the job. Because why else to take it? I mean, Barcelona doesn't need pity from anybody. Doesn't need pity from you. And you know, Laporta wasn't. I don't know if he was his first choice or not, but he certainly was pressure into that by everybody else. But he's a grown man, so I'm surprised that he doesn't enjoy this. I mean, hindsight again is a wonderful thing right now. And although I appreciate how difficult that is, and Pep Guardiola came into his defense and said how much more difficult it is to do a job there as opposed to Premier League or any other league in the world, that surprises me for a manager to say that, you know, and say, oh my goodness, how terrible this is. While still, even when Barcelona can't spend just about any money, still have some world-class players. So I don't get it.
Alex, our ESPN FC colleague Sam Marsden has written a piece today about possible replacements for Xavi at Barcelona. We've discussed this a lot, and Sam's written an excellent piece. I want to take it on a little bit. How much do Barca have to be able to afford the next manager? Can they go and get anybody they want, or are they limited by way of funds as to who their next manager might be?
It's a very good question, and it's an important question, and it's something that Barca are taking into account here, because we talk all the time, don't we, about when it comes to player transfers, about these squad spending limits that La Liga have in place. I mean, you can't just bring in, well, you can bring a player in, but you can't register them unless you're within this overall salary cap. It's always worth reinforcing the point that salary cap is for the players and the coaching staff as well, together. It includes the manager, it includes the coaching staff. And so, for example, when Xavi signed his most recent deal, I think Barca actually had to go and talk to La Liga and look for a bit of an exception to be able to kind of register him as their coach. Now, La Liga are a little bit more flexible when it comes to coaches than they are with players sometimes, because they accept, of course, a team needs a manager. You know, a team can't go into a season without a coach. So even if you're outside of the spending limits, you've got to have a bit of leeway there to be able to have a manager in place. But there are restrictions there. And especially what it means is, you know, you mentioned about potential candidates, so many names being mentioned. We don't actually know who it's going to be, which is why there are so many names and so many different kind of profiles, different kinds of coach being linked to the job right now. One big thing to keep an eye on is it would be very, very difficult financially for Barca to go and pay off the contract of the coach at another club. So it's much more likely to be a coach who is out of work, out of contract, freely available, rather than going and paying off the contract of a coach who's currently in work elsewhere, because they can't do that. They haven't got the money to do that, and certainly not within La Liga spending limits.
Yeah, Laporta's come out today and said that Xavi will be coach up until the end of the season. At half-time against Osasuna in midweek, you worried, is he even going to see the end of the season? But Laporta says he will. And Janusz, based on what Alex is saying about the total spend, what would it tell us if Barcelona appoint Rafa Marquez as the next permanent coach?
Yeah, that they have zero money. Basically that. I mean, look, you know, I remember Rafa Marquez as a player, but not necessarily as a manager, obviously, because I don't watch Barcelona play at all. So I don't know how good he truly is. My expectations for Barcelona are still much greater than Rafa Marquez. Of course, we know history and you know, Zidane's of the world and Luis Enrique have done the job, so it's not impossible. I'd give him a chance, but I don't know if that's the way to go. I mean, this is a difficult job. We've seen the austerity. You know, the one thing going for Barcelona in a way is that we've seen the austerity in the transfer market everywhere, right? I mean, now you look at people. Now I want to see how some of these big time managers everywhere, by the way, that aren't able to maybe buy the players that they wanted if they can coach. So I'd be surprised if it's Rafa Marquez. If he proves me wrong, that's fair play, and he could, because I don't know anything about him as a manager, as I've said. But I would still try to go for. I would go for Thiago Motta. I don't know what the payout is. Like I said, it's significant because it's going to cost money to pay Bologna. But I would definitely go for him. I've had a chance. I mean, obviously, we all see what he's doing at Bologna, but I've had a chance to see him at Spezia and speak with Phil Platek, who owns Spezia. Not necessarily about Thiago Motta, but there are a number of Polish players that were there at the time, and watched him very, very closely because of that. And everybody that you ask about Thiago Motta, I mean, he's one of those. He's Xabi Alonso. He's De Zerbi. It just, for some reason, we're not talking about him in those terms. But he is very much up and coming. He's got a history with Barcelona, obviously, as well. So I would go that way.
Yeah, he's got a good relationship with Deco as well. At least we found that there is one league in this world you do not watch. You do not watch Barca B. So finally, after all these years, we found a league that Janusz Michallik doesn't know absolutely everything about. Before we get on quickly to the Madrid derby preview, Alex, I was doing prep for my commentary of Girona against Real Sociedad this weekend. There's a lovely quote from Imanol with regards, he's the Real Sociedad coach, with regards to Girona. He's like, yeah, we've got to be careful here because Girona could be in danger of being one of these Kenyan athletes that is part of the pack and then disappears and you never see them again until you've got a medal hanging around your neck and you're trailing in fourth or fifth. So a nice analogy there from Imanol, and a big game for Real Sociedad at Girona this weekend.
Yeah, and Girona looking at a run of games that will tell us an awful lot. We keep saying this, don't we? But you've got this Real Sociedad game. Of course, you've got the game against Real Madrid next weekend as well, which is the really big one. But so far, every time Girona get to one of these tests, they have overcome it. They've gone past it, and they've shown us that they have what it takes. We saw that when they played Barcelona. We saw it when they played Atletico Madrid as well. It shows how far they've come that you would have them as favourites against Real Sociedad, even though Real Sociedad are a really good team, of course, in the Champions League this season and battling for the top four. So no, you'd expect Girona to go into that game and maybe get the result and then move on to Real Madrid the following week. But yeah, like I say, it just shows how far they've come. And like I say, every time we go into one of these games, we say, can they take the next step? And they keep doing, and they're right up there. And it looks right now, La Liga, like a two-horse race between Girona and Madrid.